Well, week one of the Fernando Mendoza era at Indiana wasn't all that impressive, but week two may have just put him back in the Heisman race.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Monday, everybody. Tons to get to on today's show. We've got some big Indiana basketball recruiting updates to get to. One visit has been canceled, more have been added, and one just concluded this past weekend. We'll tell you everything we need to know, everything you need to know, and kind of what I'm feeling as of right now as we continue on through a very busy month of September. Plus, we'll take a look at the biggest results in week two of college football around the Big Ten and how that impacts Indiana in the future schedule coming up. But I think Fernando Mendoza, after week one, which wasn't overly impressive, the game against Old Dominion where the offense just kind of looked it looked stagnant. It looked okay, not great, where you had an offense that got inside the five several times, inside the red zone several times, and you couldn't convert with points. I talked about going into this game against Kennesaw State that it was a bounce back opportunity for Indiana. And I think it absolutely was. And I think Fernando Mendoza took that mentality. Maybe not exactly the bounce back. I mean, he might be a daily listener. You never know. But I think he took the bounce back mentality in some way, shape, or form and used that as motivation for himself because he played nearly perfect against Kennesaw State. And I think that puts him right back into a Heisman Trophy conversation. And do I legitimately think that he's a top 5 candidate for the Heisman right now? No, I don't. But what we saw on Saturday against Kennesaw State is what we expect to see almost every game, give or take, from here on out. That's why you go to get Fernando Mendoza because of what you saw against Kennesaw State on Saturday. 18 of 25, 245 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Let me say that again. 18 of 25, 245 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Of those 7 incompletions, 3 of those were technically drops, which they were, one by your best receiver in Elijah Surratt. You also had a throwaway when you were scrambling as well. So of 7 incompletions, 4 of those were, one of them was to get out of it, and 3 of them weren't your fault. But regardless, you still only had 7 incompletions. Only 7? And he threw such a pretty ball on Saturday, multiple times. He threw the deep balls. He threw screens. He threw out routes. The timing was on point. He threw crossing routes. He was throwing to receivers before they were even out of their breaks, before they were even cutting off the numbers and heading towards the boundary. Fernando Mendoza looked like everything we wanted him to be when you went and got him out of the transfer portal. And look, I understand. It's Kennesaw State. I get it. They're bad. You were supposed to do this, but you were kind of supposed to do this last week against Old Dominion, and you didn't, who I think was more talented than Kennesaw State, but that's just one man's opinion. But it was nice to see it all come together. And if you get anything like that from Fernando Mendoza, at least from the decision-making and delivery and timing and leadership from Fernando Mendoza, if you get those things in Big Ten play starting next week, then you're going to be a really good football team. You have a chance to beat some really good football teams like Illinois and Iowa and Oregon and Penn State. You will have a chance to win those games if you get this version of Fernando Mendoza. Am I expecting him to have 4 touchdowns, no picks, and taking away the drops, only have a handful of incompletions? No, that's not necessarily expected or fair to expect, but this is a glimpse of what he could be. And you got to show that off on Saturday. And go ahead and be ready. You're going to show it off a little bit again on Friday night, too, against Indiana State. But you're not looking to show too much. You're not looking to open up the entire playbook and let everybody know what you have up your sleeve. And I think that's why Friday, it could be fun, but it could also be very, very vanilla against Indiana State. But we'll talk more about that as the week goes on. Saturday, though, against Kennesaw State was what we wanted it to be. You got your receivers involved. You got Elijah Surratt involved, who had several touchdowns and a ton of yards. And you basically reminded college football, hey, we have a top 5 dude in the country. So, yeah, don't forget about him. Don't forget about, Elijah Surratt. Don't forget about those guys. And then if you do want to cover him, that's cool. We have Omar Cooper. EJ Williams, again, had another good game despite one drop. So we've got dudes we can throw the football to. That's what Saturday was. And I loved to see that. For Mendoza, for Surratt, I think the offensive line looked really, really good as well. I think they graded out well. I read somewhere, I don't remember the exact grade, but I think Khalil Benson had maybe the highest grade or one of the highest grades on the offensive line. That's fantastic. That's awesome. That's what we want to see from the O-line, who gave him plenty of time to work, go through the progressions, and do what he needed to do. And I mentioned the leadership word a little bit earlier, too, for Fernando Mendoza, because the dude's absolutely got it. He holds people accountable. He celebrates when appropriate. And all I needed to see was him cheering on his brother when Alberto Mendoza came in, had 3 throws, 3 completions, and a touchdown pass to EJ Williams, which was absolutely, no, it wasn't Williams. It was, who caught that ball? Who caught Charlie Becker? That's right. It was Charlie Becker on just a beautiful up top ball placed where only his receiver could get it. And I watched Fernando Mendoza celebrate for his brother. That's what I needed to see. That tells me everything I need to know about Indiana's starting quarterback. So is he truly back in the Heisman race yet? No, but he'll get there. He will. He'll get there. You go out and beat some good teams with good performances, yeah, you're going to be right back in it. And here's what's crazy. I compare this to Curtis Rourke a year ago. You don't need him to win the Heisman for this Indiana team to be good because of how we ran the football on Saturday and how good our defense is playing. You don't need him to be a Heisman winner. We'd love it. We'd love him to be in New York. We'd love him to be just in the conversation. But you got a chance to see Fernando Mendoza this past Saturday and glimpses of what he can be at a big-time school, at a big-time program with big-time talent around him. And that's right here in Bloomington. And you need that to continue moving forward. You don't necessarily need it this week, but when Big Ten play hits, you need that version of him. And if the offense can grade out across the board as they did and perform the way they did, it's going to be really, really hard to beat this Indiana team. And it's all led by the man under center in Fernando Mendoza. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look around the Big Ten. What else happened around week 2 in this amazing conference, and how does it impact the Indiana Hoosiers and the future schedule that we have coming up? We talk about that next here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting on projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. And the Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free TradeMaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and dedicated support lines. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free at supplyhouse.com and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. SHCollege5 is the promo code. Real people, real service. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. College football, it's back, baby, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stand, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. It's just a headache sometimes. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Look, I pull up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw incredible deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. Okay, so take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, the promo code is LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. And reminder, we're talking some Indiana basketball recruiting to end today's show, so make sure you stick around and go check that out. We've got some big updates for you, a canceled visit, but some added visits as well, and what happened this past weekend with a big name on campus. Okay, so that's coming up in just a little bit, but I do want to take a look around week 2 of college football, especially in the Big Ten, and particularly how it impacts Indiana's upcoming schedule. Because week 2, it's one of those where you have a lot of those cupcake games. Like Indiana played Kennesaw State. Northwestern played Western Illinois. Maryland had to squeak by Northern Illinois, which we figured that was going to be the case, right? Because Maryland is bad. Northwestern is bad. I wish we played Northwestern this year. We don't. We do play Maryland, though. Indiana does. We have to go to Maryland late in the season for the fourth last game of the year. Look, Maryland looked good in week 1. They looked in week 2. I think Malik Murphy is good, but I just don't think that team is good, okay? Ohio State beat Grambling a lot to nothing. We don't play the Buckeyes this year, so no concerns there. Penn State and FIU. Now, this one's interesting because it was 10-0 at half for Penn State. And the offense has been okay for the Nittany Lions to open up the season. 46 against Nevada, and FIU, you score 34. And I don't know. I'm going to talk to our buddy Zach Seiko this week of Locked On Nittany Lions, and we're going to have to get the rundown here, or the lowdown maybe, on what the heck is going on with this Penn State offense. Defense is fine, okay? Jim Knowles is kind of playing just fine there in Happy Valley, but yeah, got to get that figured out if you're Penn State. How about Oregon? Are we going to go ahead and say that Oregon offensively looks pretty darn good? Dante Moore, 16 of 21, 266 yards and 3 tutties against a P4 team in Oklahoma State. This was not Oregon Institute of Technology. This was not Caltech. This was Oklahoma State. This was a P4 program, man. And Oregon embarrassed them after some really funny comments from Mike Gundy earlier in the week. And Dan Lanning said that they took that personally. And look, Oregon through 2 weeks of the season looks scary. They absolutely do. And remember, this is a place that Indiana has to go and play in several weeks. Now, here's what Oregon does. They go to Northwestern, host Oregon State, and then at Penn State. Well, Oregon State is bad. They're 0-2. Northwestern is bad. They're 1-1, but barely. And then they go on the road to Penn State. There's a chance Oregon's undefeated when we walk into Autzen Stadium. Like there's a really legitimate chance of that. And so keep your eye out on the Oregon Ducks. Couple of other games. Oklahoma, Michigan was good. Doesn't impact us. We don't play Michigan this year. Iowa looks abysmal. They look terrible. Iowa State escapes, survives, does whatever in a rivalry game, but Iowa drops that one. Look, if you score 15 points, you're going to beat the Hawkeyes, so we're in a good spot there. Minnesota, I don't think we play them. We don't, so not worried about that one. We do play Wisconsin, who turned it on against Middle Tennessee rather, after losing 3-0 after the first. Reminder, that's what place we play. We play Wisconsin the second to last game of the year. I'm not buying too much into Wisconsin right now. Looking at some other teams, you do play USC. Nope, you don't. Sorry, UCLA, who looks terrible. Terrible. Not only are you 0-2, you gave Dan Mullen a 3-0 start at UNLV. Yeah, it's not really working out there. Nico, 29 of 41, 255 and a touchdown, but you can't beat UNLV. And you start the season 0-2. Who does UCLA play this week? They play New Mexico. All right. Then Northwestern, and then Penn State. Yikes. Sorry, man. That is brutal stuff out there in Los Angeles. So hopefully you take advantage of that and get a win. Purdue makes it really interesting against Southern Illinois. Not sure what happened there. We don't play Washington this year, thank God, because they look really good. But we have to talk about it, right? I've stalled. I've delayed long enough. We got to talk about it. Illinois looks really, really good. They looked really good against Duke on Saturday morning. 45-19 final score for Illinois over Duke. And we're going to talk about the AP poll coming up tomorrow. It's already out, and Illinois is already a top 10 team. And I told you that they would be, right? I told you they would be a top 10 team when they came to Bloomington. They've got Western Michigan this week. They're going to be a top 10 team when they walk into our stadium. Luke Altmaier, 22 of 31, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They also ran for 123 yards and, again, threw for almost 300. And their defense shut down Darian Mensah. He did have 334 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns and an interception, and they just couldn't cash in when they needed to, talking about Duke here. Got to give Illinois their flowers, man. They went into a really good team. I'm not going to say the most hostile environment, but that's a sneaky good Duke team. One that I've talked about as a dark horse in the ACC to make some noise over there, and they handled them. I mean, just manhandled them and showed why Illinois had so much hype in the preseason and showed how talented they truly are. Am I buying back into Illinois long-term? No, but they looked good. And now they're going to get right. They're going to get healthy, and they're going to be 3-0 when they walk in to play Indiana. The difference, Indiana will be 3-0 too. The difference is they have a big win. They've played legitimate competition, and we will not have. And that will be an advantage for Illinois. Does that mean they win? No, not necessarily. But that gives them an advantage over Indiana in that aspect. And the fact that they were on upset alert pregame and just made it their game the whole way through. They were up 14-13 at the half, and they dominated the second half, especially defensively. Indiana's going to have to go and use that. Take some notes. That is one good thing. You'll have some things on film to study if you're looking at the Illini. But overall, the conference is playing well. The top is playing good. The bottom is terrible. Hey, shout out Michigan State really quick. Our boy Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans. They were pumped. Double overtime win over Boston College. Doesn't sound like much, but for Michigan State, they needed it. And reminder, Indiana plays Michigan State around the middle part of the season. So just wanted to go through, get some updates on what's going on around this conference, because Indiana's got a lot of Big Ten games coming up. Some are going to be easy. Some will not be. Some, I have no idea what they're going to be. But we'll do that every week, just keeping you updated around the Big Ten Conference and what's coming up on the Indiana football schedule. All right, in our final segment coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we will flip over to basketball. Some big recruiting updates, some good, some bad, and potential sky high. We'll talk about that next. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by The Game Cap. Quick question for all you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, that's what I said. What hat would you be wearing? For me, it's got to be The Game. Look how sweet this thing is. I've yet to wear it. I've still got the tags on it because I think it's just so crisp, so clean, and so retro, right? Look at that. It's got Hoosiers in block lettering across the top, the big Indiana University. For those of you on audio, sorry, you're missing out on something cool here. You can go check them out, though. They aren't just hats, they're the same vintage styles fans wore back in the 80s and the 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same great price that they did back then. When you use code Locked On right now, you can get one of these awesome hats for $16.99. What else can you get for $16.99 in this world? Not a Happy Meal. You can't get nothing for that for $16.99. Go to thegamecaps.com, thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount because legends wear the game. All right, final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Again, thank you so much for being here. Glad that you are enjoying the content. And hey, for those of you that missed the live show Saturday afternoon, we went live on YouTube right after Indiana football defeated Kennesaw State. So make sure that if you missed it, you can go back and check it out. We talked about the 56-9 result. You can go back and see some of the interactions. Had a bunch of people talking in there, asking questions and leaving their thoughts and things. And so be sure you check us out for that. We're going to go live after most Indiana football games this season. Going to try and do a bunch for basketball season as well. So make sure you have those notifications turned on, that you're subscribed to the channel, have your all your notifications on, okay? So that way your phone tells you when we go live. So be sure you do that and you'll never miss another episode. All right, so let's flip over to basketball because as much fun as football is and as big of weekends that we've had on the football field so far, on the back end, we've told you there's a lot going on in the Indiana basketball recruiting world. And we know we've had visits, right? You had Talon Kinney last weekend who, look, it went well for one of the nation's top point guards. Most people think and rankings say he is the top point guard in the 2026 class. I think Indiana did well. I just think it's going to be hard to overcome the deficit that you were in to start. And I just don't know if it's going to happen for Indiana. I still think the Hoosiers are a great fit for him, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Okay, so keep that in mind. You had Junior County on campus this weekend, the nation's number 2 ranked shooting guard, right? 27th in the class, according to 247, who I use. You can use whoever you want. He was on campus this past weekend, and all signs, all rumblings are that it went very well, that he enjoyed it, that Indiana was able to make it a true weekend-long celebration is not the right word, but event, if you will. He got it on Friday, had stuff going through Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. And so as far as I'm concerned, from what I've been able to gather, it went very well. Now, Indiana, I think, is in a good spot with him. I think he's one that you really, really want to have in your class. Yes, because of his playing style and his abilities, but because of the rankings, because of the numbers. 6'4", a dude that can shoot the lights out of the gym and can pretty much score at will. That's someone that you're wanting to have in this class. You need a staple at the guard spot in the class of 2026. You want it anyway. I mean, you would love to get it. And that's where Darren DeVries and company are going, I think, is Junior County, because not only did you have Talon Kinney visit last weekend, and that one's starting to slip away, you were supposed to get a visit in mid-October from Deron Rippey Jr., and that visit has since been canceled. If you haven't seen that, Deron Rippey has canceled several of his visits. Indiana was one of them. That's one where, look, man, some of those other schools like Kentucky and Mark Pope have just done a really, really good job on him. And it was always an uphill battle for Indiana. And if you remember when we talked about Rippey setting his 8 official visits in Indiana being, what was it, the second to last one or something like that, I said, look, with big time prospects like this, when they set that many visits, that spread out, right, and that far out as well, I told you, they normally don't take them all. They normally don't get to all of those visits because somebody along the way convinces them that they don't have to, or that they don't want to because they like somewhere else. And that's fine. That's how it goes. I thought it was a long shot for Indiana to get him on campus. I thought if you did, you had a good chance, but that's not going to happen. And so the Deron Rippey sweepstakes are over. You can drop that name out of the out of the bank of knowledge that you have for recruiting, and that one is no longer going to happen for the Hoosiers. So while that is disappointing from the guard spot, it just ramps up the pressure to land Junior County, which I think Indiana absolutely can. You still have a visitor coming in this weekend for September 12th. That is Anthony Thompson, the top 10 player, 6'7" forward, one who has played for Indiana Elite. He's from Ohio next door, one that Indiana feels really, really good about. And then you've got a couple of visits that weren't originally on the schedule. Two guys that Indiana has gone to see several times in the past, and they went and saw them when the new calendar opened up, when the new recruiting cycle was open, where you could go and see some guys. How about a visitor on September 19th in the 7-foot center, Ethan Taylor? He's ranked 23rd in the class overall, one of the best centers in 2026. He will be on campus September 19th through the 21st. He's coming up that entire weekend. He's one of the best centers in America. And then you double down one more time. Almost a month after that, you're going to get the 17th ranked player in the country in 7'1" center, Erfan Diani. Now, that's a name we haven't talked about in a little bit. And this is one that on the back end, Indiana has really been cooking and working and trying to make this thing possible. He's from Iowa. Remember, Indiana was in on him a long time ago. We thought it kind of slipped away, but now you're talking about two of the highest ranked centers in the country, and Indiana's going to get them both on campus. Now, the idea that Indiana could land both, I don't think so. It's possible, yes, because teams like Kansas are after both of these guys as well. And that conversation's starting to float around. Well, could one team land both? Or if one team lands somebody else, would they be out on this? And Kansas got another guy they're going after too. It's okay. Well, can a team land two big-time centers in the same class? My gut says no, but anything is possible, I guess. Anything's possible. And they're both so talented. My goodness. They're both so physical inside. They both have beautiful touch. They run the floor. They can shoot a little bit. Their defense is what they pride themselves on, of course, and their inside scoring ability. You would be happy with either one of these guys. And we're going to go into some more detail and kind of remind you who these guys are as we go and as we get closer to their visits, just to bring back some old conversations about Ethan Taylor and Erfan Diani. But this is huge. You get these guys scheduled to visit. Now they got to get here, but you have a chance to land a center or two, plus a forward. Latrell Allman's still out there, and you're still trying to land Junior County as well. You've got so many bobbers in the water. If you're Darren DeVries in Indiana, you got to start reeling them in. You got to start getting some in the boat, because these guys are going to start dropping off one school at a time, one guy at a time, one player at a time. And Indiana's got to be in there. But I feel so good about where we are with so many players, even the ones that we missed out on. Deron Rippey, if Tate Kinney doesn't work out, man, Indiana made up so much ground and made such good impressions. That will carry on. That will carry over into more recruits, into future recruits, into future seasons as well. We're doing the right things, Indiana is. It's going to pay off, I'm telling you. It's going to pay off for this class and beyond. And once you get on the floor and have something to sell, it's going to be a lot of fun. So just stay positive is what I'm saying here. Stay positive for Indiana recruiting. Keep it locked right here on Locked On Hoosiers. We're going to be covering it all over the next several weeks, really over the next 2 months, because it's going to get dicey. It's going to get fun. And I think Indiana's in a good spot to land some of the biggest players in the class of 2026. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here. Appreciate you. Make sure you like the video on YouTube. It helps it spread, helps it grow. Leave your thoughts down in the YouTube comments. I love seeing your interaction. I'm going to try and do a better job of responding to some of those and kind of having some conversations with you guys. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And then if you're on audio, turn on those notifications, follow us if you can, share it with your family and friends. If they like the Indiana Hoosiers, this is the podcast for them, okay? We are back tomorrow, Hoosier fans, for another episode. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.